Okay, so we're live here. Hello, welcome everyone. My name is Chelsea Johnson and I'm the Communications Manager for the Ontario First Nations Technical Services Corporation. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to OFNTSC's very first live Facebook video. Today I'm going to be joined by Heidi Manitowabi, who is a waste management coordinator. But before we get started, I would also just like to introduce the organization that I work for. As I mentioned, I am the communications manager for the Ontario First Nations Technical Services Corporation, or OFNTSC, as we like to call it. So here at the OFNTSC, we provide technical advisory services to First Nations in Ontario. And it includes consulting to some extent, but as well as providing training in our core service areas, which are emergency management preparedness, environment, engineering, fuel systems management, fire and safety, housing, infrastructure, operations and maintenance, and water and wastewater. So as you can imagine, we do a lot. But we also go above and beyond this, just providing our core services. And a large part of what we do involves supporting First Nations to meet the contemporary and future challenges associated with their path to self-reliance and self-sufficiency, which includes ensuring that First Nations have knowledgeable technicians in their own communities who can continue this work into the future. So we do a number of things to encourage and promote technical careers for First Nations youth. For example, each year OFNTSC gives out the Student Achievement Awards for Indigenous youth studying in a career that is in a technical field. And these awards usually open up in the first week of June or so. So keep an eye on our social media for an announcement for when those awards will be available for applications. But another initiative that we have is the Technical Youth Career Outreach Project, which is how I came to know Heidi. So through the TYCOP program, we aim to inform First Nations students about the various technical careers that exist and how they can achieve success in these areas. And we do this by showcasing First Nations role models who are currently studying or working in a technical field in the hopes that it will encourage them to pursue or follow a similar path. And this past year, we actually featured Heidi as one of our role models for the environment field. And we're lucky enough to already be connected with her through OFNTSC's environment program. So today we're going to be chatting with Heidi to find out more about her journey into this career, maybe some of the struggles that she encountered through her education path, and just hear some advice from her on for First Nations youth who may be considering studying a career in solid waste management. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce you to Ms. Heidi Manitowabi. Hi, Heidi. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for asking. I know we've never met in person, but you were at a workshop for OFNTSC where we took some photos of you for the TYCOP program. And I just wanted to know what your connection is with OFNTSC.
So OFNTSC, when I started my position as waste management coordinator for Waabnoong Bemjiwang Association of First Nations, OFNTSC had hosted their very first solid waste coordinator meeting, which is a group of us in Ontario that work for tribal councils from all over, from north to south, east to west. So we had all come together. It was a week after I had started my position. So I was kind of just thrown out into the wolves at that point. So I had made connections with people at OFNTSC, Ms. Stephanie Allen, Rupa Rakshit, and all the other great people that are part of the solid waste management team. So OFNTSC has been instrumental in supporting me in my position. Not only myself, but the member communities that are part of WBAFN. So yeah, that's how I'm connected with OFNTSC.
Yeah, that's awesome. I know we were, Steph highly recommended you when we were asking her if she knew anyone we could feature for TYCOP. So that's really great. I am actually not too knowledgeable of what a waste management coordinator does. So would you be able to tell me a little bit more about like what the day-to-day is like in your job, what kind of things you have to do? Like I'm not too sure. So yeah, I'd love to hear.
Yeah, so as a solid waste management coordinator, I work closely with the communities. So there are 6 communities that are part of the tribal council that I work for. So what I do in my job is I assist communities, and right now we're developing long-term waste management plans for each of the communities. So I'm assisting in gathering the baseline information for that. And I've also, so before I started my position, there was someone in my position for a few months before I was. So she was able to get some funding for some really great programming to happen in our community. So when I came on board, I was able to implement some of those programs. So I've done workshops in schools, implemented vermicomposting, which is composting with tiny little red worms. And then working with whether it's their public works people, environmental coordinators, because there's not just one person in a community that works with solid waste. And for people who don't know, solid waste is garbage. And that's really all that I deal with is garbage management, because garbage is never ever going to go away. We in our society today, we create a lot of garbage. So my job is to help communities figure out where to put it, where it's going to go. Sometimes we're shipping it out of off reserve. Sometimes we're helping improve the solid waste management that's happening in communities. One community in particular, we had implemented a recycling program. So recycling isn't available everywhere, but we were able to successfully implement a recycling program, which ultimately diverts waste from community landfills.
Wow, that sounds amazing. It's like super important work that you're doing right now, especially in this time of, especially right now with the crisis going on. It's just like, something that we need to focus on more. And I think that hopefully people are realizing that through the pandemic that we're currently in right now, like there's ways to live a little bit more sustainably and, kind of provide for yourself. So that's really cool. Which I guess leads me into my next question, which is how did you get into this career? Like what made you want to work with garbage, like to put it like in that sense, right? Because it's not something that
Yeah.
I think that youth would typically consider.
No, so my background, my educational background, I took environmental technology, which is a 3-year diploma program from Sir Sanford Fleming College down in Lindsay, Ontario. So Lindsay actually has a school that's dedicated to natural resources and environmental science. So I've always been kind of a nature nut. I've always enjoyed being outside, wanting to know what things were, which is why I got into an environmental program. So in everything and anything environment, and that's kind of in a sense that's what led me to my position now. So I had done work as an environmental technician in a First Nations community doing water testing, ecological land classification, a little bit of forestry work. And then I've also worked in fisheries. So I was a community liaison for a fisheries organization that dealt only with First Nations communities. And when in university, I had taken a 1-year, went to Trent University for 1 year in their Indigenous Environmental Science program. And that's when I really made the connection between my passion towards the environment and my responsibility as an Anishinaabe. So I knew that it was really important for me to stay within the environmental field, but kind of focusing strictly in First Nations communities, because we have issues that a lot of people who don't grow up on the reserve or aren't First Nations don't really understand. So I kind of felt like it was my responsibility to kind of get in there and trying to figure out what the issues were and try to find solutions to those problems. So when I was at the fisheries organization, an opportunity came up at a tribal council, and I've never worked for a tribal council before. So I thought that it was a really neat opportunity to work with several First Nations communities. And then coming into solid waste wasn't really something I had seen myself do when I was, sort of envisioning my future when I was in school. But we all create waste. we all create garbage no matter what we do. If we're going out for a coffee, if we're at home and we're opening up, a little package of fries or, carrots or anything, everything comes in packaging. So I thought that was a really neat opportunity for me to learn about this part of society that we often close our eyes to. You throw something away, where's away? We don't think about it when it gets put into the garbage bag, you tie it up and the garbage man comes to get it and you just don't think about it anymore. So I've always wanted to know.
Yeah, out of sight, out of mind.
Exactly. And I've always been I've always been interested in sort of like alternative living, alternative ways of thinking, and what more important way to do that than focus on something that people just do not give any thought to. So I've definitely learned a lot in my 1 year. I've been in my position for just over a year. I started March 2019. So it's definitely been a huge learning curve. And it's definitely a really, really interesting position.
It sounds like something that you find very meaningful, and that, maybe you didn't consider that when you were studying, but somehow your path took you on this, in this direction for a reason, which I think is pretty cool. I'm interested in learning a bit more about how, like, that connection between, our culture and our knowledge and our values as an Haudenosaunee Ongohoe person. So, we have teachings that are inherently, we're caretakers of the earth. So how do you find that connection relevant in your work? Is there any way you incorporate that, or?
Yeah, definitely. So when I do outreach with communities, so I often host community information sessions where bring community members together and we just talk about, what are we going to do with the garbage? Here's some programs that we could implement if you're interested. And one thing that I always make sure to talk about is Anishinaabe teachings when it comes to waste management. So, back in the day before colonization, everything was biodegradable because everything that we used came from nature. So everything that we took, we were able to give back. So now with the industrialization, with colonization, especially living in this super capitalist society, we're so wasteful. And there's just a lot of times when I'm with cultural people, with elders, they're always telling people, only take what you need and nothing goes to waste. So that teaching I heard for the first time pertaining to medicines when I was learning about traditional medicines, around the time when I was doing ecological land classification, learning about what the trees and the shrubs and the little plants are, and then learning that when we take something from nature, we have to give it back. And then applying, when I was at the fisheries organization, there was a little side project that I was working on with with a wildlife biologist. And so we got into a moose management study. And that was something that I heard repeated over and over again, was that we shouldn't let anything go to waste. So I was learning about all these really neat things about, about the moose, and people ate moose heart, which is like an incredible part of the moose. People are eating moose nose. I'm a bit too scared to try it. Moose tongue, which is actually like really, really good and tender. But just putting those teachings into our, into not community consultation, but community information sessions that we do, so that people are taking responsibility for their own actions, because society is made up of individuals. So as individuals, we need to look at what we're doing, what we're purchasing, and the waste that we're creating, and sort of coming up with alternatives to that.
For sure. I'm totally in agreement with you. And one of the things I think is really cool is that you're now kind of like through the TYCOP project, which, we just started really promoting it in March, and then kind of things got slowed down because of COVID-19. But, you're a little bit of now like a role model for other Indigenous youth. But I'm curious to know if you had any role models or mentors while you were growing up, and how they influenced your choice to study this career.
Yeah, so I've definitely had some role models when I was growing up. I grew up in Wikwemikong, unceded territory on Manitoulin Island. I left for a couple of years when I was in high school, and then I came back, and then I left again, and I did some traveling, and then I went to school, and then I got a job. So I have always held the role models that I do have close to heart. They're people, they're people that I still talk with. I have them on Facebook. I say hi and give them a hug whenever I see them. But they're people like Cheryl Reckley, who now works for the Confederation of oh my goodness, the Robinson Huron Treaty. She was my sort of my boss when I was working out in Waanapitei First Nation, and she had instilled in me confidence. Confidence in knowing, being strong in who you are as an Anishinaabe, and not being afraid to sit around the table with non-native people, and not being afraid to speak up about what our teachings and traditions are. And so that was really, really neat working within that context. Some other people that come to mind are Barbara Wall. She's a PhD student down at Trent University. And again, a strong Anishinaabe, tall and confident. And it's just, that was something that they had really shown me, was that you need to be confident in your job. And being confident in your job makes people confident in you. So when you're confident in what you're doing, people are confident that you know what you're doing. So then it's developing that trust with people. So I've definitely had a lot of role models that I still stay in touch with, which is really, really great. And I could kind of see that, and that's something that I've always shared with my younger cousins who want to be going to school, is that, don't be afraid to give it your all. I want you to be confident in what you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, I like what you're saying about that, because I feel like that's something that's so key for our youth to hear. Uh, you know, for me personally, I struggle with that a little bit, but I think confidence is one of those things that um, you can kind of fake it till you make it. And what I mean by that is, like, I was taking tennis lessons, and not doing very well with the backhand. And my tennis instructor was like, just pretend you have the best backhand in the world. And I did. And then all of a sudden, my shots were going over the net, and I was doing such a great, like, so improved just from that, pretending that I had the skill before I even had it. So I think that's a really important thing for people to hear, and for youth to know, is that, even if you're not 100% confident, just go in there and, hold your head high, and, the right thing will happen for you. So
Yep, definitely.
that's really awesome.
That's something that I've said a lot, is fake it till you make it. If you don't think that if you don't believe that you don't have the confidence, people are going to see that. So all you have to do is just walk in with your head high, make sure that you maintain eye contact, and keep a smile on your face. And I think everything kind of works itself out that way.
Yeah. And on that note, I like, you know, that's a really positive message, I think, for youth. But I would kind of want to know what you would say to a youth who is asking you, or what you would say to them about studying a career in solid waste management or environmental, in another pathway. What advice would you give them?
I would Some advice that I would give them is to maintain your connections at home, and maintain the networks that you make while you're in school. Because networking has been unbelievable for me. I wouldn't be where I am today if it wasn't for the networking that I've done in my position. So whether it's a teacher, a TA, a boss, or even like a band manager, if you're working at a band office, you're not, even though you don't really interact day to day with your band manager, my band manager in my first job when I was a summer student is now my boss. So if I didn't maintain that, professional attitude, In my first position, when I was in my early 20s, I probably wouldn't have landed the job that I have right now, because I maintained being professional, being courteous, being confident in my early 20s. And then when I applied for this job, now being, not going to say exactly how old I am, but like as soon as my resume had come across his desk, he knew who I was because I had worked for him,
Right.
many, many years ago. Another time when there was a changeover in staff that had happened in a position that I was at. And so I was unemployed for a little while, and my phone rang, and it was an executive director who was related to a boss that I had in my old job. And she had just said, "I heard you're not working right now. I want you to come and work for me." So like just being, like I said, just having that confidence and knowing that everything's going to work out, everything's going to be fine. Because a lot of times you just need to have faith that everything's going to be okay.
Yeah, that's so important. I think I totally agree with what you're saying. It's important to kind of get yourself out there, meet lots of people, build up your network, because that's going to bring you a long way for sure. That definitely has helped me in my career as well. So that's really awesome. I can't see if there's any comments, but we do have a moderator. Dean, do you know if there's any questions for Heidi coming through on the live feed?
Yes, we have a couple coming through. Tim Johnson asks, "What are all those jars in the background?"
So we got some pasta and some salt and pepper. Yeah. What else is back there? I don't know. I can dig it out if you really want to.
Is that part of your sustainable living there? It looks like you've got like a really good handle on that bulk buying and storing in your own mason jars and stuff like that.
Yeah.
I like it. That's really cool.
I thought it made for a really, really great background.
Looks great. I think it's perfect for this video. Is there any other questions, Dean, or is that it?
None that are coming up right now, but we will have the floor open here if you want to ask Heidi or Chelsea any questions.
So while we're waiting, just going back to when you had asked me some of the traditional sort of values that I incorporate into the work that I do. When I was in university, the elder in residence was Heidi Manitowabi, who is part of the Bemjiwang Lodge, and she would host a lot of like gatherings in the university, and I've since stayed in touch with her. She now lives in Waabnoong. She put me out for my first fast, gave me my Anishinaabe name. And there was one teaching that I've always carried with me that she had given me, which actually really pertains to the position that I'm in now. So she calls it the 4 R's. So everybody who knows about solid waste, or, like has a garbage can and a recycling bin in their house, knows about the 3 R's, right? Recycle, reduce, reuse, and recycle. The 4 R's is respect, responsibility, reciprocity, and relationships. And that's something that that's pertinent to almost every aspect of my life. So talking about solid waste management, having respect for Mother Earth. If you have that respect instilled in yourself, you'll think twice about littering or buying products that have excessive packaging on it. Responsibility. So being a responsible citizen, being a responsible steward of Mother Earth. So what is it that you're going to do to pass that responsibility on, whether it's to your family, to kids, to nieces, to nephews? What kind of responsibility are you going to be instilling in your family members? Reciprocity. So I had mentioned giving and taking. So when you take something from Mother Earth, you have to give something back. So that can also be implemented into solid waste management. So when you're buying something from the store, you're thinking about, okay, I'm taking this from here. Where is this going to go now? So, thinking about, buying in bulk, bringing your own materials to, like zero waste stores. How are you going to reciprocate the gifts that you get from Mother Earth. And then relationships, whether it's maintaining relationships with coworkers, with colleagues, or what your relationship is to Mother Earth. What is it that you're doing to maintain that relationship and to grow that relationship? So I'm not, the way that I had my camera set up earlier, I was trying to have, my sister is starting a garden for my mother. So there's some tomato plants and some, all these little seedlings around. So that's, especially with COVID-19 pandemic going on right now, people are really, really talking about food sovereignty and wanting to grow their own food, because not only is food insecure, because it comes from, we're getting our tomatoes from California, our garlic is coming from China, when these things can be grown in our own backyard. So what type of relationship are you having with Mother Earth, with your food? Yeah. So, like, especially with people who are growing their own gardens, they're drastically eliminating the amount of waste that they're creating, because they're going outside to pick their carrots rather than going to the store and coming home with a 5 or 10 pound bag. So
yeah, and they haven't been transported, like you said, from California or Mexico or wherever it may be. So
yeah,
that's awesome. I think that's such a great just reminder and message for us to all hear again, and perhaps to wrap up on. Dean, is there any other questions out there, or?
No, I don't see any more coming in here.
Okay. Well, just to wrap up, I'd like to say thank you so much, Heidi, for taking the time to join us today. We really appreciate you and everything that you're doing for our First Nations communities in Ontario. It's really exciting. We are going to hopefully be able to do more of these live Facebooks with some of the other TYCOP role models, so stay tuned for those announcements. And this video will be available to watch at any time after we finish. So it'll be posted to our Facebook page, and feel free to share it if you know a youth who might benefit from watching this video. And lastly, I would just like to say thank you to our funders who made this entire project possible, Indigenous Services Canada. Yeah, that's all I have for today. And Heidi, do you want to say anything else? Any last words?
no, just Jimmy Witch. Thank you so much for having me.
Great. Thank you so much, Heidi. And thanks for everyone for joining us. And we'll see you next time. Bye.